I'm Laura the Library Lady, and welcome to this episode. Today I will be discussing Brown Bear, What Do You See? By Mr. Bill Martin Jr., one of my favorite all-time children's authors, and Mr. Eric Carle, who's the illustrator, and he's also an author. I have the great pleasure of meeting Mr. Bill Martin back in the 1990s. Gracious, wonderful author, and I was able to be in a conference with Mr. Eric Carle. Kudos, both of them geniuses. Mr. Martin is no longer with us. So if you want to look up information about either of these individuals, please feel free to do so. There's lots of information. Brown Bear, What Do You See? Is definitely a pre-K, pre-3 book. It uses rhyme and repetitiveness and colors. So let's jump right in and discuss this wonderful book. Typical of Mr. Carle, lots of color. So even when you turn the first pages, it's interesting. He's got colors on the page and it's moving. So you can discuss these colors with your children way before you start reading the book. Can they identify their colors? And I love it when it says Brown Bear, What Do You See? On the title page by Bill Martin is red. Pictures by Eric Carle in green. So I love the use of color, and Mr. Carle does use painting and collage, which is a wonderful art form. So many children's illustrators do that. So here we go. Brown Bear, What Do You See? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Yellow duck, what do you see? I see a blue horse looking at me. So you see, just after a few pages, there's a rhythm and a rhyme to what Mr. Martin is using. And when children are very young and they're learning to read, rhyming and patterning, having a pattern and making things sing-song, it makes it fun. Because when I used to read this to little ones, the kids used to almost sing it with me, you know, yellow duck. And I love the way he uses color. So little ones are also learning their colors. So we have yellow, we have red, and we have brown. Now most of us will not see a bear, but after traveling to Yellowstone, the Great Tetons, and the great states of Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, you actually may see a bear. And it was so funny because when I went to Jackson Gap, I went on a hike up in the mountains, and then I went to the Teton Mountains by myself, and I was hiking, okay? Yes, I know, it's hard to believe. And I met Jenny Lake in the Teton Mountains, and I'm walking around, and I start my hike, and there's this sign, do not feed wildlife. I'm like, that's not a problem. And it's only 2.5 miles or whatever. I'm like, I can do that, even though I had already hiked 4 miles that morning. I know that may not seem like a lot, but when you don't know what you're doing and you're going uphill and around, I mean, Wyoming is not flat, so you're going up and down and around and climbing over things. And, you know, I live in a suburban area, and I'm from Detroit. Like, I know what I'm doing. So the first time I went hiking, I paid a guide, and we went out. And, yes, the 8-year-old did a better hike than I did. But, hey, I finished the hike. I went home, ate to my hotel, which was wonderful. It was a deluxe Best Western. Ate a little lunch. Went out to the Teton Mountains. Don't know what I'm doing now. I've never been to Wyoming before. Get to Jenny Lake. Get out of my car and start this hiking. I'm like, oh, 2.5 miles. I've done 4 miles this morning. No big deal. Start the walk. As I said, do not feed wildlife. I'm like, no problem. Walk a little further. It says, be aware of bears. And I'm like petrified now because my travel agent, who is wonderful, so if any of you ever want to go to Wyoming or Yellowstone, let me know, and I will give you her information. And I'm like really scared. And so some girls are coming back and I'm like, have you seen a bear? Oh no, not since this morning. I'm like, fine, because animals usually come out to get to the lake in the very early morning or in the evenings. But animals do what they want to do, kind of in their territory. So I continue my hike, and I see this final sign that says, "Do not hike alone." At this point, I am so scared. I'm about to cry, and I'm like, I really want to do this hike. And you know, God just blesses. And I run into this family, and I got adopted all over Wyoming, Idaho. Well, not so much Idaho. I was only there half a day, but in Montana and in Wyoming, everybody was so nice to me. I guess I have a pretty face. And so they were from Paint Branch High School here in Maryland, where I used to work. All the adults were my age. They were all graduates of Paint Branch High School. They had all moved out west. It was a brother, sister. It was great. It was like 10 of them. We hiked that 2.5 miles together. I even fell over some roots at one time. They picked me up, dusted me off. And when you're hiking out there, it's like sometimes you're hiking and you look straight down, and if you fall, you die. So it's not like, oh, I'm just going to go hiking. We hiked. We went up the side of the mountain. We saw this beautiful waterfall, walked back down, trying not to kill ourselves, and then paid for the ferry. Because if we had gone around the whole lake, I think it was 7 miles. So hopefully I have my memory is correct, because I may be stating this wrong. But it was a wonderful experience, and I just had a great time. So brown bear, I didn't see one in person, thank goodness. So if your child wants to see a brown bear, most of us will see one at a zoo. And I think taking your child to the zoo, not during a heat wave, because the animals won't come out, it's a great thing. Then we have the red bird. Now the wonderful thing about our gardens in the back, we see red birds or cardinals, we see blue jays, we see robins, sparrows, hummingbirds, and monarch butterflies. So there's been an enormous amount of activity. And yellow duck. Now I have to say, I don't see a lot of yellow ducks. We do have geese in our area, and sometimes they're in traffic or anything. But not only when you read this book with your child, are you talking about reading and where the text is and the paintings and the colors, but you can talk about what is the habitat for a bear. What does a bear need to do to stay alive? If you live in California or out west, you know, you're going to see that. When do you see, or how do you see a red bird? What does a duck need? And it goes on for a horse. Okay, I was up in Montana. I got on a horse for 4 hours. I will never get on a horse again unless a miracle happens. You talk about painful. Whew. But so what do you do to take care of a horse? It has we have a lot of frogs, but it's been so hot I haven't seen frogs. And it has dogs and everything. But what I love about this book, toward the end of it, and Bill Martin just pulls it all together, is it says, "Teacher, teacher, what do you see?" And we see the teacher here very, you know, I'm not quite sure when this book was written, and Bill Martin is no longer with us. 1967, it was originally released. It was released in 1983, and the illustrations were copyrighted in 1992. So all of this stuff is copywritten. But if you look at the teacher, she's, you know, white. She's got glasses on. Her hair looks like it's up in the bun. But I love this picture of the children. The children are every color in the rainbow. I just think that's really great. And then it has a review of all the animals in the book. This is a wonderful book for preschool. I would say 2 to 5 years old. Excellent book. I would recommend it for any school that has pre-3, pre-K, kindergarten and first grade. Very simple. Sing. So I have done this with children, and we sing through the whole book. It leaves you happy. You can do coloring. So many activities with this book once you finish reading it. And so I definitely recommend it. I mean, yes, you could get it at the library, but I would highly recommend, and I have a hardback, and I bought this book. It was not cheap. But I personally, this is my personal copy, so I recommend anyone to purchase this book for your child or your grandchild, cousin, whatever. But I'm always going to advocate for the library, and you're going to find this in all of your public libraries for young children. And if you don't, that's another thing. If you're ever in a library and they don't have a book, don't worry about it. Talk with the librarian. interlibrary loan, or you can ask, can the book be purchased? So always talk to your librarians, because just because they don't have a book doesn't mean they won't get a book. The only time they won't be able to get a book if it's out of print. That means it's no longer being published. But if there's a great demand, that may be true. But always check Google or check online, or because if it's an old book, it might be on Google. Google has a number of books online, but of course there's fight over copyright. And of course you can always see if it's in an e-content format. So if this is copywritten, this is not my original work. I'm definitely doing a shout out to the author. Unfortunately he's deceased, but the publishing company still gets the profits, and of course Mr. Carle is still with us. So go out, get a great book for your child or someone you know, and Brown Bear, Brown Bear. You can't go wrong. Wonderful book. And if all else fails, always visit your public library. Thank you.